What happens when one of daytime TV's smoothest hosts faces off against one of the most talked-about guests in recent memory? When Mark Consuelos welcomed Meghan Markle onto the set, producers expected an easy, polished conversation. Instead, they got a careful, tense exchange that left the audience shifting in their seats. From the moment Meghan's polite smile turned into a calculated smirk and Mark's tone sharpened, it was clear the interview was heading somewhere no one had planned. The studio that morning glowed warmly, the audience buzzing with excitement. The guest list had been kept secret until the last minute, which only added to the suspense. When the doors opened and Meghan Markle appeared, the applause was instant and loud. She wore an ivory dress, tailored, elegant, and unmistakably commanding. For a moment, she looked every bit the poised figure her admirers imagined. Mark Consuelos, seated beside Kelly Ripa, leaned forward to welcome her. "Meghan Markle. Great to have you here," he said warmly, extending his hand. Meghan accepted the handshake but quickly let go. Her smile was polite, though slightly guarded. Kelly, ever the crowd-pleaser, jumped in. "We were just saying backstage how exciting it is to have you with us this morning. And I have to say, your entrance got the loudest applause of the week." "Really?" Meghan tilted her head, almost as if she already knew. "Well, that's nice to hear. I do tend to get that reaction." The audience chuckled nervously, sensing both confidence and edge in her remark. Kelly moved on quickly. "So, Meghan, you've been in the headlines quite a bit lately. New projects, travels, charity work." "Yes," Meghan cut in smoothly, her tone almost rehearsed. "I've been working on initiatives that matter deeply to me. It's not just about appearances or the stories people invent. It's about creating real change." She glanced toward the cameras, pausing before adding, "And I think people are finally starting to understand that." Mark nodded, encouraging her to continue. "You've said before that you feel misunderstood by the media. Do you think these new projects are helping to change that perception?" Meghan crossed her legs, her expression calm but firm. "If I'm being honest, I don't think I owe anyone a perception shift. I've lived authentically. If people can't see that, it isn't my burden. But," she added with a thin smile, "the work I'm doing speaks for itself." Kelly and Mark exchanged a quick glance. Should they press further or move on? Kelly chose the safer route. "Well, we've heard you've been spending some time in New York. How's that been?" "It's been fine," Meghan replied, stretching the word as though grading the city. "New York has its charms. But I find it chaotic. I'm used to balance. Here, it's different." A few murmurs rose from the audience, some amused, some uneasy. Meghan didn't acknowledge them. Instead, she redirected the moment. "But let's not focus on where I am. Let's focus on why I'm here." The pivot was sharp enough to make Mark blink. "All right," he said evenly. "Tell us why you're here." Meghan leaned forward, her voice carrying more weight now. "I'm here to talk about my new lifestyle brand. It's more than products, it's a way of living. It's about mindfulness, intention, and creating an environment that reflects the best version of yourself." Kelly smiled, though carefully. "That sounds fascinating. Will it be available worldwide or—" "Oh, eventually," Meghan interrupted, waving her hand lightly. "But I believe in exclusivity at the start. Not everything should be for everyone. It's about curating an experience for people who truly get it." Her words landed heavily. Some in the audience raised their brows. Others stayed quiet, unsure what to make of it. Mark leaned in. "So, you're saying your brand is for a certain type of person?" Meghan's lips curved into a subtle smile. "Well, let's be honest, Mark. Not everyone values quality over quantity. And I'm not lowering standards just to appeal to the masses." The air in the room shifted. Kelly shifted in her chair. The warmth of the studio was now layered with tension. Kelly smiled and leaned in. "Well, we'll definitely talk more about your brand, but first I have to ask. You've had quite the journey, from acting, to royal life, to business. Looking back, is there anything you would have done differently?" Meghan's gaze stayed steady. "I wouldn't change a thing. Every choice I made was right in that moment. People can speculate, judge, twist my story all they want. But I'm still here, and not everyone who criticizes me can say the same about their own lives." The remark cut through the room like a blade. The audience fell silent. No nervous laughter this time. Kelly drew in a small breath before saying, "Well, on that note, we'll take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Meghan Markle." The cameras cut, but the tension lingered. Meghan's posture remained perfect, but her eyes revealed a glint of determination, someone who had no intention of losing control of the conversation. When the cameras came back, the energy in the studio was different. The applause returned, but it was softer, almost cautious. The audience clearly felt the undercurrents from before the break. Kelly, ever professional, jumped in with her trademark cheer. "We're back with Meghan Markle, talking about her new lifestyle brand, her journey, and the many roles she's taken on throughout her career." Mark Consuelos leaned forward, his tone calm. "And Meghan, we wanted to touch on something that's been in the headlines. Your view on the public's perception of you. You've said before you're not interested in winning over everyone. That's a bold stance in today's media world." Meghan folded her hands in her lap, her expression unshaken. "Well, Mark, I learned the hard way that if you spend your life trying to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one, least of all yourself. I'm not here for a popularity contest. I'm here to live my truth and do work that matters." Her voice was calm, but sharp enough to pierce the smooth atmosphere. Kelly tilted her head, careful with her words. "But surely there's some value in meeting people halfway, in finding common ground?" Meghan's smile was tight. "Common ground only works if both sides are willing to stand on it. And I've seen enough to know some people don't want common ground. They want control." Mark leaned back slightly, feeling the air shift. "So, you believe the media has tried to control your story?" "I don't believe it, Mark," Meghan replied firmly. "I know it. There have been outright lies published about me. And instead of being given the benefit of the doubt, I was expected to stay silent. To smile and let it slide. That's not strength, that's compliance. And I'm done complying." A low murmur moved through the audience. Some nodded in agreement. Others simply glanced at each other. Kelly tried to keep things light. "You know, I think people might be surprised to hear you this candid. You've been portrayed." Meghan cut her off. "Portrayed as what?" "Difficult. Ambitious. Traits that would be praised in a man are somehow threatening when applied to me." She turned slightly toward the crowd. "That's no coincidence, and we all know it." The silence that followed was heavy. Mark kept his expression neutral, but his eyes stayed locked on her. "So, is that part of why your brand is designed the way it is? For people who get it?" Meghan's look was direct. "I'm not building my work for people committed to misunderstanding me. If that sounds selective, so be it. Excellence is selective." Kelly adjusted her posture, her tone warm but cautious. "Some might say that means you're closing yourself off to broader audiences." Meghan didn't pause. Maybe those audiences need to raise their standards. A sharp inhale swept through the crowd. The words hit hard. Some took it as empowerment. Others heard it as an insult. Mark cleared his throat. "Let's pivot for a moment. You've been in the public eye for years. Acting, philanthropy, royal life. What's the most misunderstood thing about you?" Meghan answered without hesitation. "That I need public approval to validate my existence. I don't. I never have. I've been in rooms where everyone underestimated me, and I walked out having outshined them all. That's not arrogance. That's fact." The tension between her and the hosts was thick. Kelly let out a light laugh, but her eyes gave her away. "Well, confidence is important." "It's not confidence," Meghan corrected flatly. "It's knowing your worth. If people confuse that with arrogance, that's their problem, not mine." The audience was split. Half clapped. Half stayed silent. Mark glanced at Kelly. A silent question passed between them. Push harder, or let it go. Kelly chose a gentler question. "All right, Meghan, tell us more about this highest version of yourself philosophy your brand promotes. What does that look like in everyday life?" Meghan's tone softened, but her words were still firm. "It's about living with intention. choosing your space, your relationships, your habits to reflect the person you want to be. It's not about pleasing everyone, it's about setting boundaries, so only the right energy enters your life. Mark raised a brow. Boundaries are good, but in public life they can be tricky, right? You still have to engage. Meghan shrugged lightly. Engagement is optional. So is access. The words landed heavily, her smile doing little to lighten them. Kelly, sensing the tension, quickly steered the show toward a break. Well, Meghan, we'll take another quick pause. But when we come back, we'll talk about some of your upcoming collaborations, and maybe a little about your life away from the cameras. Meghan's eyes flickered with a look that was half amusement, half warning. If it's interesting enough. Music swelled, the camera panned out, and the audience could feel it. This was no longer just a warm morning interview. Something sharper was unfolding. When the cameras returned, the shift in energy was obvious. The smiles were tighter. Pauses between questions stretched just a little too long. The Live with Kelly and Mark audience leaned forward, sensing what was about to come wasn't part of the original plan. Kelly spoke carefully, like someone walking on thin ice. So, Meghan, before the break we touched on boundaries, self-worth, and access. But life in the public means people will always form opinions, sometimes harsh ones. Do you ever feel the need to soften your edges for the sake of perception? Meghan leaned back, crossing her legs with deliberate calm. Kelly, the only time I'll soften my edges is when it's strategically useful, not just to make someone else comfortable. If a strong woman makes people uneasy, that's their issue, not mine. The audience clapped, some enthusiastically, others with caution. Mark, who had been quietly watching, leaned forward. His voice was steady, but direct. But Meghan, if you dismiss perception completely, don't you risk alienating potential supporters? Even great causes need allies. Meghan's smile held, but her words sharpened. Mark, I'm not here to run a campaign for likability. The allies I want are the ones who don't need to be convinced of my worth before offering support. Mark lifted an eyebrow. That sounds exclusive. It is exclusive, Meghan replied instantly. Exclusivity maintains standards. And if people can't handle that, maybe they were never meant to be in my circle. The air in the studio felt hotter. Kelly shifted uneasily, trying to redirect. Let's talk about your collaborations, then. You're working with some major names. Are you concerned your strong positioning might make certain brands wary? Meghan's eyes glinted. Any brand that's afraid of a woman owning her narrative isn't a brand I want to work with. Full stop. Mark smiled faintly, a smile that felt more like a challenge. What about the public who feel you've distanced yourself? That you've built walls so high, even those who once admired you feel shut out? Meghan tilted her head, her voice cold and precise. Mark, walls exist for a reason. They keep out what doesn't belong. And if someone feels shut out, maybe they should ask themselves, were they invited in the first place? The audience reacted instantly. Gasps mixed with scattered applause. Kelly's smile wavered as she glanced toward the producers. Some people might take that as a little harsh, she said carefully. Meghan's reply came swift, her words cutting but controlled. Harsh is telling someone to stay silent while the world invents stories about them. Harsh is smiling through lies just to keep others comfortable. Compared to that, my honesty is kindness. Mark leaned back, folding his arms. So, you don't think there's value in compromise? Compromise is fine, Meghan said evenly. When you're deciding on dinner plans. Not when it comes to your integrity. The tension was now almost physical, settling over the audience like a heavy weight. Kelly let out a laugh, but it cracked at the edges. Well, I think we've learned that Meghan Markle doesn't mince words. Meghan's smile was thin but steady. Not when the truth works just fine. The producer offstage waved for another break, and Kelly jumped in fast. All right, we'll take a short break and be right back, she said. The lights dimmed, and the applause began, though it was uneven, almost unsure. Mark glanced at Meghan, then at Kelly. The message between them was clear. This wasn't over. And when the cameras came back for the final segment, the real heat would begin. When the lights came back up, something felt different. The air in the studio was thick, heavy. Even the audience, who had been clapping on command all morning, now seemed hesitant. Kelly looked at Mark with a half-warning, half-challenging glance, as if silently asking, "Are you really going to push this?" Mark leaned forward. His voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut. "Meghan, you've spoken a lot about protecting your boundaries. But what do you say to critics who believe that's just another way of shutting people out, including family?" The word family hit like thunder. Everyone in the room knew that was the one subject Meghan's team had marked off-limits before the show. Kelly quickly tried to step in. "Mark, I think." But Meghan raised her hand slightly, silencing her without looking away from Mark. Her eyes were steady, locked on him. "If you're asking whether I've chosen to remove toxic influences from my life, yes, I have. And I'll do it again every time. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about keeping yourself whole." Mark didn't back down. "But when the public sees you cutting ties, some say you're burning bridges you don't need to. You've built a brand on empathy and compassion. Doesn't that contradict your image?" Meghan's voice sharpened. "Empathy does not mean letting yourself be treated like a doormat. Compassion does not require self-destruction. If that confuses people, then maybe they've never lived under constant public and private sabotage." The audience murmured. This wasn't a polite interview anymore. Kelly tried again. "Maybe we should shift to your upcoming projects." But Mark pressed harder. "You've spoken about integrity. But what about accountability? Do you think there's any part of you that played a role in some of these broken relationships?" The room went silent. The tension was unbearable. Meghan's face grew calm, almost regal. Her reply was cold but precise. "Accountability is taking ownership of your own actions. It is not taking responsibility for other people's lies, manipulations, or betrayals. If you can't tell the difference, then maybe journalism isn't the career for you." Gasps rippled through the audience. Kelly's jaw dropped slightly before she quickly closed it, trying to recover. "All right, let's." But Meghan stood. Her movement was steady, deliberate. She smoothed her dress, looked toward the audience, and said clearly, "I think we're done here." The studio erupted. Some people clapped, others shouted. The sound was chaotic. Kelly stood too, raising her voice over the noise. "Meghan, we'd love to have you back any time." But Meghan was already walking toward the wings. Her stride was calm, her posture strong. She didn't look back. Mark leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. The cameras scrambled to follow the sudden exit. Off-stage, producers waved frantically, arguing about whether to cut to commercial or keep rolling. Finally, the screen faded into an awkward, lingering shot of Kelly forcing a tight smile while Mark sat in silence. The tension still hung in the air like static electricity. Outside the studio, the moment exploded. Clips of Meghan's walkout flooded social media within minutes. By the end of the hour, hashtags were trending worldwide. No one agreed on who had won the exchange. Some said Meghan had stood her ground. Others argued Mark had exposed cracks in her image. But everyone agreed on one thing: daytime television had just witnessed one of its most unforgettable exits. So now the question is, what do you think? Was Meghan right to stand firm, or did Mark press her too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and subscribe. More shocking and unforgettable TV moments are coming, and you won't want to miss them.